fight scene with Bruce was the effort that he put in to make sure that the audience knew I was getting hit.
The footage shouldn't exist. Hidden for 50 years, this behind-the-scenes moment from Enter the Dragon wasn't scripted, rehearsed, or meant for cameras. What it captured was Bruce Lee's raw truth, the man behind the legend, stripped of performance and pretense. The restoration is grainy, colors bleeding at the edges, but when the frame sharpens and he moves, something deeper than nostalgia hits you. This isn't just martial arts history, it's humanity in motion.
There's a unique kind of silence that exists on a film set, a silence that doesn't come from quiet, but from anticipation. On the set of Enter the Dragon, in the blistering Hong Kong heat, that silence began to form long before anyone understood why. It started as a shift in the courtyard's rhythm, the extras slow in their movements, the chatter dimming, the crew suddenly more alert. Something subtle, instinctive, was passing through the air. The courtyard itself pulsed with activity. Dozens of extras in the signature yellow uniforms practiced their sequences, waiting for the next call. Camera rigs stood in fixed positions, ready for the next take, their metal frames burning hot under the sun. The stone floor, swept over countless times, showed dark streaks of moisture from the humidity and from the sweat of everyone working under relentless heat. Men wiped their brows. Someone shouted for props. Another adjusted the reflector board, and then Bruce Lee stepped forward. To the untrained eye, it looked like a rehearsal, but to anyone who had ever worked with him, to anyone who had ever watched the way he treated every movement as intention, every breath as preparation, this was no rehearsal. Bruce didn't rehearse halfway. He didn't walk through anything. His philosophy revolved around truth and action. Even when cameras weren't rolling, he moved as if the world was watching, not out of vanity, but out of discipline. The atmosphere shifted immediately. It wasn't something loud or dramatic. It was subtle, like a ripple working its way through the courtyard. Crew members exchanged glances. A few stepped back without realizing it. The kind of instinctive withdrawal that happens when someone senses tension before their brain can label it. A moment suspended in time, just before something real happens. One camera, by pure coincidence, kept rolling. Not because someone anticipated what was coming. Not because the moment was planned, but simply because the operator hadn't stopped it yet. That stroke of chance would become one of the most important moments in martial arts history, even though no one standing there knew it. Bruce's presence sharpened the courtyard. His steps were controlled, soft but confident. There was nothing casual about the way he moved. Every shift of his weight, every rotation of his shoulders, carried intention. His breathing was steady. His eyes focused on something or someone off frame. The camera finds him in those first seconds, the way cameras always do, because Bruce didn't just stand in space. He commanded it, even when quiet, even when still, even when he didn't try. Across from him stood a young stuntman dressed in the same yellow uniform as the rest. Too young to hide his nerves, too inexperienced to mask a mixture of fear and thrill building inside him. Sweat clung to his forehead as he adjusted his stance. His hands rose, uncertain. His weight shifted inconsistently, betraying his confusion. Was this a rehearsal? A test? A real challenge? Bruce didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even bother with a warning. The tension snapped. What happened next lasted less than 60 seconds, but to the crew watching, it unfolded like a spark exploding in slow motion. The stuntman lunged, whether by instinct, panic, or misplaced confidence, no one could say. But the attempt was clumsy, telegraphed, and too easy for Bruce to read. Bruce moved, not with theatrics, not with the sweeping motions the cameras crave in choreographed scenes, but with economical precision. His body dropped effortlessly into a stance. One step, perfectly placed. One angle, perfectly chosen. A shift in balance that any martial artist would recognize instantly as control. And he countered. Fast. So fast that even the camera, even restored and slowed decades later, struggled to capture the exact sequence of movements. A blur of hands, a pivot, a redirection, a strike delivered not with cruelty but with clarity, as if he were reminding the world that truth speaks faster than fiction. The stuntman stumbled, surprised, breath knocked out of him. But pride is a stubborn thing, especially in front of a crowd. He attempted another attack, this time angrier, less controlled. His arms lashed forward. His feet moved with desperation instead of technique. Bruce met it with the calm of a philosopher and the precision of a boxer. He pivoted lightly, redirecting the strike as if brushing off a leaf. Then a second movement, quicker, cleaner, decisive, that brought the young man to a halt. The impact echoed softly in the courtyard. Not dramatic, not loud, but final. The stuntman took a half step back, eyes wide. His breathing shook. Then, instinctively, almost involuntarily, he bowed. It wasn't ceremony. It was recognition. A silent acknowledgement that he had crossed a line he didn't understand. And Bruce had answered without malice but without hesitation. The courtyard held its breath. No one cheered. No one moved. The extras stared. The crew stared. The atmosphere felt torn open by something undeniable. Something that didn't belong on a film set, but belonged deeply to the man at its center. This wasn't a scene. This wasn't performance. This was proof. Proof that Bruce Lee didn't just portray mastery. He lived it. Proof that his speed wasn't camera tricks. His precision wasn't choreographic illusion. Proof that when instinct met discipline, there was no room for doubt. As Bruce relaxed his stance, the tension dissolved. He stepped back, not triumphantly, not boastfully, but simply as if the moment already belonged to the past. The stuntman wiped his face. A small trail of blood glistened under the sun. His pride had been broken, but his body was intact. Because Bruce chose control over force. The camera was still rolling. It shouldn't have been. It wasn't supposed to be. And yet, because it was, we now have a piece of history that nearly vanished. The rare truth of Bruce Lee caught unfiltered, unstaged, and undeniable. Every story has a spark. A moment so small, so ordinary, that no one notices its significance until long after the flames rise. On the set of Enter the Dragon, that spark wasn't a shout or a confrontation or a grand gesture. It was a whisper, a quiet, mocking laugh drifting through the humid air of the courtyard. A sound that should have blended into the chaos of filming, but didn't. A sound that found its way to the only man on set who could not ignore it. Between takes, the extras gathered near the columns, their yellow uniforms sticking to their backs as they tried to escape the heat. Resting, joking, talking. Anything to distract themselves from the brutal Hong Kong sun. Among them stood a young extra, barely in his 20s, leaning against a pillar with the careless arrogance that youth often mistakes for confidence. His voice carried just enough to be heard. His friends laughed with him, their words rolling quickly in Cantonese. Normally, Bruce Lee paid little attention to background noise. He was focused, detached, conserving energy for the next shot. But this time, the tone of the conversation caught his ear. The laughter wasn't joyful. It had an edge, sharp enough to slice through the courtyard. The words themselves were familiar. Bruce had heard them for years. Skepticism from traditionalists, criticism from jealous peers, dismissive comments from those who believe Hollywood martial arts were nothing more than elaborate dances. But that day, for reasons no one could fully explain, the remark hit deeper. Perhaps it was the exhaustion, the long hours, the intensity of filming, the pressure creating the most ambitious martial arts movie the world had ever attempted. Perhaps it was the persistence of rumors questioning his authenticity. Or perhaps it was simply time for a lesson. Bob Wall, who played Han's bodyguard in the film, later revealed exactly what the young extra said. Wall, who understood Cantonese, overheard every word, though the extra did not know that. "I reckon you only act out your fighting," the young man boasted. "You're not for real." The words hung in the air, heavier than the heat. The smirk that followed only deepened the cut. For anyone else, this would have been meaningless noise, the kind of ignorant chatter that fills any film set. But this wasn't anyone else. This was Bruce Lee, a man who built his life on disciplined truth, a man who believed martial arts were not performance but expression, a man who had been challenged countless times before and understood the responsibility that came with every response. His tolerance was vast, his patience well practiced. But that day, in that courtyard, something in the atmosphere shifted. A tipping point between rumor and reality. Bruce was reviewing choreography with the assistant director when the whisper floated toward him. He paused mid-sentence. The courtyard seemed to pause with him. The extras continued laughing, unaware of the moment they had just triggered. Bruce turned. His expression didn't show anger, didn't show irritation. What it showed was certainty, a decisive clarity, a line that had been crossed. The laughter died instantly. Bob Wall remembered it vividly. Bruce's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. "You come on down now." Not a request, not a threat, a command. Silence fell. True silence. The kind that feels thick, heavy, electric. Every extra turned to look. The young man froze where he stood, his smirk collapsing into dread. His friends no longer laughed. They stared straight ahead, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. There was a split second, a single sliver time, when the young extra could have apologized, could have backed down, could have walked away with his pride bruised but intact. He didn't. Maybe pride pushed him forward. Maybe humiliation. Maybe the myth of Bruce Lee convinced him he could prove something. Whatever fueled the decision, it sealed his fate. He stepped forward into the open courtyard, and suddenly the entire set transformed. It was no longer a place of filmmaking. It had become an arena, raw, exposed, unprotected by choreography or staging. The air thickened with anticipation and regret. The heat felt heavier. Even the cameras seemed to hold still, as if afraid to interrupt. The young man tried to compose himself. His chin lifted slightly, his fists clenched and unclenched, betraying his nerves. Sweat trickled down his temples. He looked smaller now, not because Bruce grew larger, but because the weight of his choice settled on him fully. Bruce walked toward him with no dramatic flair, no theatrics, no hint of showmanship, just purpose. Pure, undeniable purpose. His stance was relaxed but ready, his breathing steady, his eyes cold with focus. The kind of focus only someone who has spent a lifetime perfecting himself can summon. Cameras weren't supposed to be rolling. No director called action. No lights were adjusted. No choreography was discussed. But one camera, just one, still captured everything. And the moment Bruce positioned himself across from the extra, the energy in the courtyard collapsed into complete stillness. It was a stillness before impact. The stillness of two opposing truths about to collide. Arrogance and mastery. The extra swallowed hard. He tried to mimic Bruce's stance. Tried to hold his hands up with confidence. But the tremor in his fingers betrayed him. Crew members pretended to adjust lights. Extras pretended to look away. But every set of eyes was fixed on the space between the two men. The film set had become silent testimony to one of the most infamous confrontations in martial arts cinema history. And no one, not even Bruce, knew that the moment was being immortalized. Because as the young man stepped forward, guided by pride rather than discipline, the real spark ignited. The spark that would lead to the fight, the rumor, the myth, the disappearance of footage, and its eventual discovery 50 years later. What happened next wasn't Hollywood. It wasn't fantasy. It wasn't performance. It was a raw truth that had been whispered about for decades. Truth born from a single moment of arrogance and answered with precision, discipline, and absolute control. When the young extra finally stepped into the open courtyard, the entire atmosphere shifted from uneasy tension to something far more dangerous. This wasn't a scene blocked out by the director. It wasn't a controlled spar meant to warm up the cast. It wasn't even a friendly exchange between martial artists. This was something raw, an unplanned confrontation caught between pride and absolute mastery. And everyone on set could feel the danger humming beneath the surface. The heat pressed down on the courtyard like a weight. Extras stood frozen, pretending to adjust their uniforms, eyes darting between Bruce and the challenger. The crew tried to act casual, but their hands stalled on equipment, and their conversations died mid-sentence. It was as if the entire set had been pulled into the gravity of what was about to happen. A fight on a film set wasn't unheard of, but a real fight, a serious one, between a martial arts icon and an untrained, overconfident extra was unthinkable. There was no announcement, no warning, No call for cameras. Yet one camera remained rolling. By chance, by luck, by fate, that camera would capture what, for decades, nobody believed actually existed. The moment the young extra shifted his weight forward, Bruce Lee reacted. Not aggressively, not with anger, but with the kind of clarity that only someone deeply grounded in their discipline could demonstrate. His stance was relaxed, casual, even, but behind that ease was explosive potential. Bruce had always preached the importance of honest expression. And now, in front of dozens of stunned witnesses, he prepared to express honesty through movement. The extra through the first strike. It wasn't well formed. It wasn't strategic. It wasn't measured. It was fueled by embarrassment, adrenaline, and the foolish hope that he might prove something. His fist cut through the air with all the subtlety of a desperate man. Bruce moved before the punch even fully extended. A pivot, small, precise. A faint shift of his center of gravity. A motion so clean that it looked effortless. He redirected the strike without meeting force with force. Instead, he used the young man's momentum against him, guiding it away as if pushing aside a swinging curtain. And then came the counter. It wasn't a dramatic high kick or an exaggerated block meant for camera flair. It was simple, efficient, a direct expression of Jeet Kune Do philosophy. Bruce's counter landed with a clear, sharp connection, just enough to stun, not enough to injure. The young man stumbled back, eyes wide, shocked by how quickly the world had tilted. But pride is stubborn. He stepped in again, faster this time, trying a barrage of strikes. They were messy, uneven, fueled by panic. Bruce sidestepped every one of them with calm precision. His face didn't change. His breathing didn't rise. His posture remained loose, flexible, poised, not to harm, but to control. Andre Morgan, who witnessed the moment firsthand, later described it with blunt clarity. He could have killed that kid. He didn't. He just humbled him. The courtyard watched, breath held tight. Each exchange lasted only fractions of a second. The young extra lunged. Bruce dissolved out of range. The extra swung again. Bruce met the attack with a rapid series of controlled taps. Light strikes delivered to vulnerable points with absolute restraint. Any one of them could have done real damage had Bruce chosen to escalate, but he didn't. He was demonstrating skill, not dominance. The extra grew more frantic. Sweat poured down his temples. His movements lost whatever structure they had. He collided with air more than with Bruce. And every time he extended a strike, Bruce punished the opening, but gently, deliberately. It was a lesson, not a beating. Finally, Bruce ended it. A single, sharp, perfectly placed strike, not cruel, not excessive, but final, landed squarely, halting the young man mid-motion. The extra froze. His breath caught. His knees trembled. For a moment, he simply stood there, overwhelmed by the sudden clarity of his own mistake. Bob Wall later explained it bluntly. Bruce played with him for a couple of minutes, then slapped him around until the guy was all bloody and messed up. But even Wall emphasized that there was no malice in it. Bruce wasn't humiliating him. He wasn't retaliating. He was demonstrating, teaching, reminding everyone present why his reputation wasn't built on rumor. It was earned through mastery. As the fight ended, the young man staggered back, defeated and humbled. Small droplets of blood trickled from a cut on his lip. His pride had taken the largest blow. He bowed, awkwardly, quickly, and stepped away from the center of the courtyard. No applause followed. No cheers. No laughter. The crew stood motionless, as if unsure whether acknowledging the moment would break some unspoken rule. The extras stared at the ground, ashamed, awed, or both. Even the friends who had encouraged the young man earlier couldn't look Bruce in the eye. Bruce himself simply relaxed his stance, exhaled softly, and returned to his place. No triumph, no taunting, no acknowledgement of victory. It was simply over. But the camera was still rolling. And in that sliver of stolen footage, martial art enthusiasts and skeptics alike would someday discover the impossible. Bruce Lee not performing, not acting, not choreographing, but being. Pure, unfiltered, real. What the crew didn't know that day was that this moment would outlive them all. that it would become one of the most whispered legends associated with Enter the Dragon, that people would argue for decades whether the story was true, that many would dismiss it as myth, and that, eventually, the footage capturing the fight would vanish, buried, forgotten, lost, only to reappear half a century later. A hidden battle, once reduced to rumor, now preserved on film. A truth that defied time. A minute of reality that changed everything. Decades passed. Generations came and went. Enter the Dragon became a cultural monument. Bruce Lee's final, unfinished message to the world. Fans memorized every frame. Historians dissected each behind-the-scenes photograph. Martial artists studied the choreography like scripture. Yet the rumored fight remained nothing more than a ghost story whispered in convention halls, online forums, and dimly lit dojos. For many, the legend was simply that, a legend, a tale lost to time, exaggerated by memory, inflated by admiration. Even those who believed the fight truly happened doubted that footage ever existed. Hollywood studios were notorious for discarding and used reels. Old film stock degraded quickly, especially when stored improperly. Countless hours of cinema history had vanished into dust because no one thought to preserve them. So the idea that a stray camera captured Bruce Lee in a raw, unfiltered moment seemed too good to be true, too convenient, too mythical. But truth has a way of resurfacing, especially when it's least expected. The discovery begins with a rumor. The breakthrough didn't happen in a polished studio vault or a collector's gallery. It began with an offhand comment during a small interview recorded in the 2010s. A former Hong Kong assistant cameraman, an older man with a fading memory and a long list of forgotten credits, mentioned something strange. Some reels from Enter the Dragon never made it back to Warner Brothers. Most people ignored the comment. Forgotten reels weren't unusual. Film stock often went missing during international co-productions, but a small group of archivists and martial arts historians took notice. They began asking questions. They interviewed surviving crew members, searched shipping logs, compared archival records, and chased rumors across continents. Eventually, the trail led not to Hollywood, but to Hong Kong, a storage room frozen in time. Tucked inside a decaying building on the Kowloon side of the harbor, sat a warehouse owned by a long-defunct Asian production company. Time had not been kind to it. The sign had peeled away. The windows were clouded with dust. Inside, moisture clung to walls, and rust devoured anything metal. But what mattered wasn't the condition of the building. It was what lay hidden inside. Rows upon rows of film canisters stacked carelessly on metal shelves. Some unlabeled, some mislabeled, some marked with nothing more than dates or cryptic shorthand. Many reels had deteriorated beyond saving, warped, brittle, or fused together from humidity. What we've just uncovered isn't simply a lost piece of film. It's a rare window into the truth of who Bruce Lee really was. A man who moved through the world with unmatched precision, discipline, and integrity. Not as a mythical figure, not as a Hollywood icon, but as a human being living his philosophy in motion. That single minute of footage reminds us why he remains timeless. Every movement, every breath, every stance was deliberate. Every moment carried purpose. For this channel, this video is more than a story about martial arts or cinema history. It's a celebration of mastery, resilience, and authenticity, the qualities that make someone legendary long after they've gone. Bruce Lee's lesson wasn't the choreography or the punches. It was in showing the world that mastery comes from dedication, humility, and truth. And sometimes, the most powerful moments are the ones captured when no one expects them. If this glimpse into Bruce Lee's reality inspired you, humbled you, or even moved you to rethink what it means to pursue excellence, then we've succeeded. Our goal is to uncover these hidden histories, share the stories that inspire, and bring the extraordinary into focus, frame by frame. So, if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll continue exploring rare discoveries, untold stories, and moments that redefine the legends we thought we knew. Thank you for watching, and remember, the truth often lies in the details, and sometimes in the seconds we almost miss.